Okay, guys. So, welcome to You Are That Which You Seek meditation group. Before we dived into this one, I wanted to do a couple a couple contemplative questions while our eyes are still open, and then it'll lead into the meditation. Usually, we do contemplative questions in the meditation, but this time I thought it might be fun to just momentarily experiment with our eyes open because it's helpful to not only realize these things when our eyes are closed, but when our eyes are open, because our eyes are open throughout the day most of the time. So it's really helpful to apply the things that we talk about in the meditation to our daily lives. So let's ask ourselves this simple question as we're looking forward, whether it may be on the screen or whether it be into the room that you're sitting in, or wherever your location is. As we look forward, as we look straight ahead, let's ask ourselves, is it possible to know that what I'm seeing is space, or it may make more sense to use the word distance, between myself and whatever I see in front of me, without referring to my thoughts, images, or memory. So while looking straight ahead, is it possible to know that what I see is distance, without referring to thoughts, images, or memory, to know that information? And when we do that, we can see just how habitual, and that's even a negative term, and it's not intended to be negative, just how close our thoughts, how quick our thoughts are to respond to that. Our thoughts will give an answer as far as what it perceives. It'll say, yeah, I mean, obviously there's a distance between myself and what I see over there. And we're not wanting to prevent that from happening, even, because it's an important part of life to be able to interpret. And so it's not a bad thing. We're not trying to get rid of it, but we're just wanting to call it up. We're wanting to bring it to the forefront of our attention for the purpose of looking past it, so to speak. Because typically it's not at the forefront of our attention. We're not totally conscious that the way we're interpreting life is through space or distance. So we just live out that experience, which is the experience of feeling separate. But if we call it to mind, if we ask ourselves in this moment, while looking straight ahead, is it possible to know that what I'm seeing is, in fact, distance, without referring to a thought, an image, or a memory to tell me so? And all we're really looking for here is just that stillness. And there's nothing fancy to it. It's in fact the most simple experience possible. It's not even an experience. We're just wanting to become more conscious of that as an interpretation of distance, space or distance as an interpretation, rather than a fact of life with a continuity that never breaks. So we'll ask ourselves one last contemplative question before we dive into our meditation, while looking straight ahead. Is it possible to know anything about time without referring to a thought, an image, or memory to deliver us that information? And when we do that, we might start to get curious about the possibility of time not even existing outside of a thought, image, or memory. We might start to get curious about time being synonymous with a thought, or being suggestive due to an image or a memory. And so we look straight ahead and ask ourselves, is it possible to know anything about time without referring to a thought, an image, or a memory? And the mind will come up with great answers. It'll say something like, well, sure, there's this moment and then the next moment. But what was it that delivered to you the idea of a moment being distinct from another moment? Maybe this moment now and the moment 5 seconds ago wasn't two different moments, but actually the same one thing that gets parceled out through the vehicle of thought, images, or memory. Maybe there is never one moment that's distinct from another moment. But our thoughts will say something like, well, what about change? Clearly I can see my environment changes, my self changes. I can drop a coffee cup on the ground and it will change its form. But again, we've looked at the one thing that is here through the lens that parcels the one thing that is here out into a series of distinct moments. We're not saying this is not a helpful interpretation for our mind to present to us reality through that lens. However, we're wanting to simply become curious about if it's even possible to look past that interpretation, look past thoughts, images, or memory. And so let's do this, try this one more time. While looking straight ahead, we'll ask ourselves, is it possible to know anything about the idea of time without referring to thoughts, images, memory, Is it possible to know anything about time?